Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of All Bulls Podcast. This is the fourth episode since this podcast started. First thing first, I want to say thank you for listening to my podcast from all the episodes, including this one. I appreciate it and keep listening to this podcast. I do have a announcement regarding this podcast, and I will announce it by like about close to the end of this episode. So please stay tuned for that. Now, let's get to start. Uh, First thing first, free agency. Free agency had begun midnight. Free agent, free agency going wild already on Twitter, on Facebook or Instagram, especially Twitter. Running wild with reports, with deals, potential deals. Just a while ago, Timothy Moscow, who played for the Cleveland Cavaliers the last couple of seasons, who is a free agent, agreed to a deal that he'll be going to the L.A. Lakers for 4 years. Well, according to the reports, it will be 4 years and $64 million. Now, you're wondering what's got to do with the Chicago Bulls? Well, keep in mind we got Robin Lopez, who is the under contract, current under contract with the Chicago Bulls right now. Since remember he was traded part of the Derrick Rose deal about a week ago, and his contract, what I know, and correct me if I make a mistake, that Robin Lopez contract's like about 4 years, 44 million, around there, 4 years, $44 million deal. That is a bargain. My that is a bargain. When you see others players playing at the center position getting overpaid in this market. Timmy Moscow will get $64 million 4 year deals with the LA Lakers, and pretty soon it looks like, well, even though it's not no confirmed yet, there's no agreement yet, that Choki Noah looks like, who is a former Chicago Bulls, one of my favorite players, which I have heartbroken when he officially leave the Bulls and go elsewhere, whether it's the New York Knicks or Minnesota Timberwolves or wherever. But it looks like you'll be going to the New York Knicks, and there's been reports that you'll probably be getting about 4 years, $70 million deal. That's great for Choconoa getting paid. It's great that Timmy Moscow getting paid, but not great for the teams. Overpay them. They are overpay them. I love Choki Noah, don't get me wrong, but he's not worth that much. Neither Timmy Moscow is worth that much. As a matter of fact, Timmy Moscow didn't do much last season for the Cleveland Cavaliers, and he still get overpaid. Choki Noah, it's a different story. He's a huge risk dealing with injuries. The last few seasons, he have knee issues. He even have foot. He has a history of foot issue. It's just not a good deal for the New York Knicks. It's good for Choki Noah, getting that kind of salary. And keep in mind, Choki Noah is about the age of, I believe, 31-year-old, while Robin Lopez got 4 years, $44 million. It might be less, it might be a little more, but I know it's about around that range, I believe. Like I said, correct me if I'm wrong about the Robin Lopez contract. So that is a bargain deal. So I feel pretty good having Robin Lopez under contract with a good value of his contract. So it's a good value, especially when salary cap goes up, which is going up, plan to go up this this year for the salary cap, and next year is supposed to be go much up, potentially. So it's a bargain deal for the Chicago Bulls. with Robert Lopez under contract. Now, there's a lot of reports going on with who the Bulls' interest and stuff. There's been reports by even Casey Johnson from the Chicago Tribune that Chicago Bulls will be bottom feeders in free agency this year and try to keep under cap. They will have they have cap room this year and they're gonna have more cap room next year. Even Gar Forman stated in the press conference, I believe, this past Monday when they introduced Denzel Valentine, who was the number 14 overall pick for the NBA 2016 draft. Gar Forman stated something along like that, which he loved to use the word flexibility, which he loved to say that since he was named as the general manager for the Chicago Bulls. He loved to use that word, and he always say that, and he said it again, that this team will be flexibility this year, and most importantly, next year, and even possible 2018. It's pretty, looks like from all the reports may be true that they are aiming 2017 free agent class, which is supposed to be stronger next year than this year free agent class, which it is a weak class this year free agent class. Uh, Excuse me. So we see what happens. I remember I mentioned this the last episode of this podcast, and we see what happens. But there are reports that who the Chicago Bulls target. The first thing I want to mention about is Etwan Moore, who is the current free agent, and from according to reports on Twitter, I read the reports by someone from on Twitter that Etwan Moore is getting a good offers by several teams, so it doesn't look like he'll be returning to Chicago, which Gar Forman stated on the same press conference this past Monday that one of the priorities is re-signing Etwan Moore. I like Etwan Moore, a solid defender, not a great shooter, but not a bad shooter. Decent ball handling, pretty much a combo guard. What I like to call him, a utility player, meaning, in other words, serviceable player that can understand his role, a small role. He understands his limits and plays role pretty well. As long as you don't give him a big role, he's gonna be a useful player for any teams. But he's not worth whatever he's. I don't know what he's looking for in terms of salary, but I wouldn't overpay him. Um, he'll be a good addition for any teams, and so we'll see who will sign him. I don't think, this is my personal opinion, I don't think the Bulls will be able to sign him, especially whatever salary he's looking for, and teams might be willing to offer him according to the reports I read on Twitter. So we see about that. Now, who are the Bulls' interest? There's been numerous reports. There's been many reports flying around on Twitter and on the internet, social media, regarding who are the Bulls' interests. There's been reports that the Chicago Bulls going to meet free agent Harrison Barnes from the Golden State Warriors, who is a restricted free agent. Keep that in mind. I'm not a big fan of his because let's face it, he's not good. It's pretty much simple. It's to understand he's not a good player. He's like the version of Tony Snell. He's not a good shooter. His ball handling is below average. Not a good defender. The only thing he have over Tony Snell is he's more athletic, and he's younger than Tony Snell, which I believe he's the age of 23 or 24 old. I believe. He's not worth the max, which I believe that's what he's looking for. And a lot of reports speculate that that's what his salary demands are, is the max deal. I want to give him a max deal. I won't even sign him at period at all. I won't even give him a dime. That's how bad he is. I'm not a big fan of his game, as you can tell. He's just not a good basketball player. We already have Tony Snell on the roster. We don't need another Tony Snell wannabe on that roster. So thanks, but no thanks. And I even mentioned this on this podcast. Talk briefly about the free agency, the last episode that reports that the Chicago Bulls, are among teams interested in free agent Evan Turner. I say I'm not a big fan of his game, but but I don't mind signing him as long as it's a reasonable deal and possible a 1 year deal. I don't mind a 2 years deal, but depending on the salary. And as a backup, play as a backup, he can back up Jimmy Butler if need to, and and back up whoever's the starting small forward for the Chicago Bulls. He'll be a solid backup guy to use as a rotational player, but nothing more. That's pretty much it regarding Evan Turner. He is a solid rebounder, but it'll be interesting if he actually how he fits under Fred Hoiberg. As a matter of fact, he doesn't fit Fred Hoiberg, and I brought that up last episode, I believe, on this podcast regarding Evan Turner's. He's a solid rebounder, decent ball handling, not great, and average defender. That's pretty much it. Decent playmaking, but nothing to brag about. Another player that there's being reports that the Bulls are interested in free agent who is a restricted free agent, Mo Harkless, who is a small forward, and I believe he's in his early 20s, and he had a solid year last season with the Portland Trail Blazers, and I don't mind picking him up. I'm a fan of his game. He's young. He showed some improvement last season, and he's still young. He has a lot left to develop his aspect of his game. So I don't mind for the Bulls pick him up. Of course, depending on the salary and the length, of course. There are other teams interested in Mo Harkless, and I should mention that there are other teams interested in Evan Turner too. But anyways, back to Mo Harkless. He's a high energy, athletic player. Love to do the dirty work, and he could only get better. He'll be a useful player, and I hope. I actually hope the Bulls sign him, and that will be a solid pickup for the Chicago Bulls. Another player the Bulls interested, and there's reports that the Bulls are interested in point guard Tyler Johnson, who was a backup point guard and plays a little bit at the two guard for the Miami Heat last season. Before the injury, he was playing solid basketball actually. Tyler Johnson, but then he injured his shoulder. I believe it was a shoulder injury, and then he was out for many games. He did come back later, close to the end of the season, including the playoffs this past year, and he was struggling. I'll be okay picking him up, but depend on the years and the salary on the contract. But the Bulls do need a point guard. They desperately need a point guard. Look at the depth chart at the point guards right now as the roster stands. They have Jose Calderon. You got Jaren Grant. They got Spencer DeWitt, even though I prefer to put him at the two guard, which I think that's what I prefer. I mentioned that I talked about that or about Spencer DeWitt a couple of episodes ago of this podcast. But anyways, that's pretty much it. The depth chart of point guard we have right now is not good. So I wouldn't mind picking up Tyler Johnson, but it's nothing to brag about, but it's not too bad. But it's depending on what offer what contract you will get. what's the salary and what's the years. Um, as for other reports regarding the Chicago Bulls, um, uh, there's not really many right now. Like I say, there's basically the Bulls are having a 2017 plan, which they hope to get a top free agents next year. Or there's been rumors or reports that they are targeting two max players they're aiming at for 2017 and potentially year 2018 as well. 2017 we have players like Stephen Curry, Russell Westbrook, Chris Paul. I believe Blake Griffin will be a free agent as well next summer. Um, I'm not counting on it. I'm not getting my hopes up for it, but I hope for the best. Guard Foreman did state that the Bulls need to get younger and get more athletic, which they desperately need. Um, and it's also depending what's gonna happen this summer free agency too, especially with Kevin Durant. A lot of people suggest that he could be signed for a 1 year deal and wait till next year to become a free agent, especially when his teammate Russell Westbrook will be a free agent next summer. Uh, so we see about that. So we see that. So Kevin Durant could be added to that list. So we see about it. It's just like there's been reports by Casey Johnson from Chicago Tribune that the Bulls probably maybe sign one or two players and they're gonna have a quiet off season, which is probably not surprising until and they won't make much noise until next off season. So we see about that. Uh, Personally, to me, if according to Guard Foreman on his press conference, that this team is retooling, not rebuilding, and there's a lot of debate and discussion regarding should the Bulls retool or rebuild. There's a lot of Bulls fans on message boards, Twitter, and even in Chicago that Bulls fans prefer it's time for a full rebuild. Me personally, I think it's time for a full rebuild, but of course, there's nothing guaranteed about. There is a pros and cons. People need to understand this. There are pros and cons whether any teams go rebuild or even a retool. There's also a pro and con on retooling as well. Um, this team may probably need to rebuild, but looks like they're Guard Foreman says it's retooling. What I see so far, I think they're semi rebuilding. And what I mean by semi rebuilding, that he's getting those young players, and he has players like Jimmy Butler on the current roster, probably to build on or to build around. To that's what I think. Look at the roster right now. Do you, as a stand right now with their roster, do you see the Chicago Bulls make the playoffs this coming season? There's some Bulls fans say they will make the playoffs, the bottom like 8, 7, maybe 6 seed, and there are others who think the Bulls will miss the playoffs. I say this on Twitter the last few days with someone on Twitter that I don't, as of right now, I don't think the Bulls will make the playoffs. They will be headed back to the lottery as of stand right now. Even they have Jimmy Butler whether Jimmy Butler's on the roster or not, I think they'll miss the playoffs. Think about it. Last year, they bring the same team last year. Season before that, they got the roster. They bring the same roster from the season before to last season. All they do to change last season was fire Tom Thibodeau and hire Fred Hoiberg, and they didn't even make the playoffs with the same roster. On paper, they're supposed to be maybe top 5, top 4 teams in the playoffs in the Eastern Conference in a weaker conference, and they didn't make the playoffs. They win 42 wins, 40 loss. Above 500, they missed the playoffs. Now look at the roster now. They pretty much got worse, uh, especially the point guard, the depth chart of the point guard position. Um, it got worse. Well, and there's possible, and I even mentioned it on with someone, my fellow Bulls fan, on Twitter that it's possible there are other teams in the Eastern Conference might improve in this offseason. But to be fair, free agency just start just now, which teams are allowed to talk to free agents, but no free agents can't sign any other teams until I believe next week. Um, so there's that. I would say, to be fair, I would say wait till maybe August, around August, to get a better picture and a better idea where this heading at, where how much improvement with the Eastern Conference. But as it stands right now, I don't see the Chicago Bulls make the playoffs this coming season. Um, for me, if I was seriously about retooling the team, if I would retool the team, I would at least try to call Kevin Durant to set a meeting. Now, I know for almost a fact that Kevin Durant will even consider the Chicago Bulls. So that's pretty much a dream, pretty much for any Bulls fan. Um, but I will at least give a call and try. He's not. If he doesn't want a meeting for the Chicago Bulls, not even consider it, then you move on. I would. I will also target Mike Conley, who is probably the underrated point guard, a pure point guard, from playing for Memphis Grizzlies for the last few years. A solid defender, can win the offense. I brought that up last episode of this podcast. He will. As a matter of fact, if you look at this year free agent pool and the point guard, it's pretty thin. The only top point guard who is a current free agent that's worth signing is Mike Conley Jr. That's pretty much it. There's some other players that are okay pick up, but nothing to brag about, and some of them probably looking for a big salary, like Jeremy Lin. Jared Jack, here's another one who just got waived, I believe yesterday, from the Brooklyn Nets, who's now a free agent, but he just recovered from a torn ACL injury, so I'll probably stay away from him. But if you can get him for the vet minimum, pick him up. But anyways, another players I would target if I was the general manager for the Chicago Bulls and I would doing, I target Mike Conley Jr. I would target Nicholas Batum, which I doubt he'll consider the Bulls realistically. It's not really realistically. I will also target Kent Bazemore, who is from the Atlanta Hawks, who is a free agent, who is, by the way, according to reports, looking for a big payday, which is not worth repeating. Another player I would target is Chandler Parsons, who will fit under Fred Hoiberg. Only thing I'm really concerned with him is his knee injury he's dealing with the last 2 seasons. So that's my concern. Who else? Another players I will target like Eric Gordon, which is another player who's a risk. He has been injury prone pretty much, and but it doesn't look like the Bulls are interested in him. Looks like he may be going to the New York Knicks, who are also interested in his service. Another player I would target is Marcus Thornton. His game is basically similar to Eric Gordon. Both are undersized two guard, but can shoot the ball light out. I will target him too. Who, I know I'm missing someone, but another player who's a free agent this summer, and I don't have the list of free agents top of my head right now, but those are who I would target if I was the general manager of the Chicago Bulls, and I'm serious about retooling this team retooling. And like I say, personally, I don't think they're actually retooling, but I don't think they're not actually full rebuilding. If they were actually full rebuilding, they would get rid of they would trade Jimmy Butler for assets. They would trade Taj Gibson and Mike Dudley Jr. If they go for a full rebuilding. They will dump those two and probably get something good in return, trading Jimmy Butler, and then probably maybe a draft pick if to trade Charles Gibson, and maybe just dump Mike Dudley Jr. maybe for contract expiring. You know, Mike Dudley Jr. Matter of fact, both Mike Dudley Jr. and Taj Gibson are going to be a free agents next summer, so they're pretty much contract expiring. So the Bulls probably get some draft picks and some assets. But yeah, if they were going with full rebuilding, that's what they would do: trade Taj Gibson, Mike Dudley Jr., and Taj Gibson. They already let Joakim Noah, Pau Gasol walk, who both are free agents, who are current free agents now, and they already traded Derrick Rose. However, if the team were actually a full retooling, they either keep Derrick Rose, possibly either keep Jimmy Butler or trade Jimmy Butler, and probably let both Paul Gasol and Joakim Noah walk, and probably target someone like, I don't know, maybe Al Horford or something. But if they're actually fully retooling, you have to keep in mind, when they traded Derrick Rose, they got Robin Lopez, who is the age of 28-year-old. So they're pretty much semi-retooling. They do have young players. Jimmy Butler, I believe Jimmy Butler, no, actually, I take it back. Jose Calderon is the oldest one on the roster right now. Current roster. He's, I believe, the age of 34. The rest of the players are in their 20s right now. So that's why I would say maybe semi retooling, but not good enough to make the playoffs even in the weak Eastern Conference. Like I said, I mentioned this earlier, that as a stand right now, I don't see the Bulls make the playoffs. Even there are semi retooling, so I would say they're semi rebuilding and semi retooling, if that makes sense. If you think about it for a second and look at the roster, how they construct, just not good enough to make the playoffs. And you have to look at other teams, how much they improve in the Eastern Conference. So it's something to keep an eye on too. And what else to talk about? Oh, I want to mention this. I've been reading. Now I don't know how true this is. I'm reading some reports on the internet, whether it's on Twitter or some other sites. There's been reports that Derrick Rose is trying to change his stance of recruiting, and and there's been reports Carmelo Anthony, and Joakim Noah are trying to recruit Kevin Durant, which doesn't look like he will even set a meeting with the New York Knicks as of right now. And there's been reports that Derrick Rose is currently recruiting players. Now, over the years, if you're a Chicago Bulls fan, you've been following the Bulls, that Derrick Rose have a strong what's the word I'm looking for? Against, pretty much he has this policy that he's against recruiting since he's entering the NBA. The only player he did recruit when he was playing for the Chicago Bulls was two years ago, I believe, recruiting Kurt Heinrich for him to come back to play for the Chicago Bulls. That's pretty much it. That's all he did with the recruitment. But other than that, he never recruit. Now there are Bulls fans out there, whether it's on message boards, Twitter, whatever. Um, that they have some of them have a strong opinion about Derrick Rose not recruiting, and some Bulls fans uh, either bash Derrick Rose for not recruiting when he was with the Bulls, or that he should recruit, and they whether make an argument, you know, that he should recruit this player or recruit that. There are some Bulls fans don't care if he doesn't recruit. Personally, for me, I usually don't get up, get on Rose for not recruiting. That's yeah, it is the general manager's job to convince the players or try to get the player free agents to sign with your team. However, recruitment by other players can help. Um, it's for me, it doesn't bother me much. If Daryl doesn't want to recruit, he doesn't want to recruit. That's up to him. He didn't recruit. However, now since he's acquired by the New York Knicks, he started recruiting. Now that's what pissed me off. Right? If you against recruiting with when you play for the Bulls, and suddenly you gotta start recruiting when you play for a new team. Suddenly, man, that I love Derrick Rose, and I feel bad for him when he deal all those kind of injuries. Yes, he said a lot of stupid things the last few years. However, my stance of him not recruiting when he was with the Bulls, but suddenly he wants to recruit now for the New York Knicks. That that rubs me the wrong way. That actually pissed me off, and I don't blame other Bulls fans would be pissed off about it too if Derrick Rose changed his stance of recruiting suddenly, start recruiting other players for the team. That will boil me. That will boil any Bulls fan. Uh, I'm sorry about that, man, but that ticks me off really. When he should do at least should recruit for the Bulls, and he's from Chicago for crying out loud. That's his hometown. I mean, if you don't want to recruit for Chicago, okay, fine. But when you go to a different team and you start recruiting for a different team suddenly, and you're not from there or whatever, that boils me down, man. That pisses me off. I'm sorry for my language. Oh, it's not really much a bad language, but it's just boring me. Um, moving on. Uh, Free agencies. It'll be interesting. It'll be kind of interesting what the Bulls going to do. Even though I think it'll be a quiet off season or quiet free agency for the Bulls. I do expect them, and even Casey Johnson reported on Chicago Tribute probably maybe one or two signs. So we'll probably sign one or two players. So we see about that. Um, for the Bulls needs, they do need a lot of stuff. They need a point guard badly. They still need to get more athletic, especially at the wings. They need more reliable shooters. They need a isolation scorer to help Jimmy Butler a little bit when Jimmy Butler is the only isolation scorer we have right now. We need another one, maybe one more one-on-one player at the very least. Um, I would still look for an athletic big man, a shot blocker, a young athletic big man, but that is not necessarily a big need yet, but it will be later down the road. The most biggest needs right now the Bulls need is point guards. Is the most important need right now they need to address. Um, and right now, I'm gonna be honest with you. I am looking if I looking on the internet right now on the website. We see if I'm missing anything regarding free agency who are the Bulls' interest. I may forget some what I can cover it right now. Oh yeah, I knew I forgot something. This is not got nothing to do with free agents right now, but there's been reports that according to leaked sources or whatever that the Chicago Bulls are uh, in discussion with Todd, like possible dealing Todd Gibson, power forward. Now he is something I would should trade on draft night. Him and even Mike Dudley Jr. and even if you include Tony Snell too, but you probably won't get much regarding Tony Snell. But should at least trade Todd Gibson on draft night, especially when there are players dropping down in the first round, late first rounders, and early second rounders. I mean, heck, you may be able to get some late first rounder and early second rounder trading Mike Dudley Jr. alone. Because after all, that's who was it? Sacramento King traded, I believe, Marco Bellinelli for some time somewhere around, I believe, mid round or early mid round first round draft pick. It's in the 20s this year. Uh, they get that. They get a first rounder for Michael Bailey for crying out loud. The Bulls should trade what to get some young talent probably who's dropped down to trade just at least Mike Dudley Jr. alone or trade Todd Gibson. But I still think Todd Gibson do have some foul, not the best foul like Jimmy Butler, to get something good in return. Uh, but we see it's possible the Bulls may move Todd Gibson and Mike Dudley Jr. or it's just Todd Gibson, but I'm not. I don't know it's gonna happen. Remember, Todd Gibson's contract will be expire next summer. It's possible it could keep him until trade deadline next year in February to see we may get something better offers. So that's a possibility. Same, which you could include Mike Dudley Jr. in the package too. So that's another possibility as well. Um, something to look into. So keep that in mind. Uh, and another thing, I, I love how. Keep in mind, I want to talk about the Team USA, which the Olympics start, I believe, in August, and I believe they will have expedition games in July, sometime around there, if I remember correctly. And Jimmy Butler will be playing for the Team USA. Um, I love what I read and from the interview from Kyrie Irving, who's also will be playing for Team USA, that he was telling Jimmy Butler he wants to play one-on-one basketball with him. I love it. Why? First off, to get better, not just for Kyrie Irving, but also for Jimmy Butler to get better, and Jimmy Butler can, to say, make friends, and it showed that players show respect of Jimmy Butler, and possible maybe if Jimmy Butler up for it can help for recruiting players, recruiting free agents later down the road to join the Bulls. So that's always a plus for Jimmy Butler playing summer basketball. The only thing I will concern is injuries, just like any other players who play for Team USA, is injuries. Hopefully, no one on Team USA get injured. We saw what happened to Paul George a few years ago. Broke his foot, out for a season that year. I think it was 2-3 years ago. I can't remember exactly when, but that's what happened. Hopefully, no one on Team USA get injured. No one. Hopefully, not Jimmy Butler too. Man, um, what other I need to address or say that I need to cover? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and make an announcement since I'm pretty much close to the end of this episode. The first thing is, like I said earlier, I'd like to thank everyone who listened to this podcast, giving me a chance and listen to this podcast. I appreciate it. Um, I say this before and I'll say this again. Feel free. All feedback always welcome. Always, whether you post feedback, comments, whether it's on YouTube, uh, Twitter, or whatever. Now, as for my announcement, As after this episode, after this upload, as of right now, I'm gonna change the name. Well, one of my announcement. I have more than one announcement. Let's be clear on it. One of my announcement is the All Bulls podcast. After this episode, the next episode, I'm gonna change this name instead of All Bulls podcast. Then I'm gonna change to a different name, which I think will be a better name than All Bulls podcast. And this podcast will be called for from now on, starting the next episode. Will be called Bulls Talk. Um, Give me your opinion, your feedback is always welcome about the name change. What do you think of this name change? It's called Bulls Talk, which is basically same thing. Chicago Bulls podcast. Talk about Bulls related. That's what they call it. Bulls Talk. And now another announcement. Now I upload this podcast on both SoundCloud and YouTube. On SoundCloud, which is, don't get me wrong, it's awesome. No complaint about it. Not much complaint about it. It's great. However, on my account, I'm under the package of the free version. And right now, before this podcast, I only have like 70 minutes left to use on SoundCloud. Unless I'm upgrade to I believe they call it the Pro package or Pro version or something, which you have to pay to get more additional minutes to your account. Um, Very unlikely. I don't think I'm gonna upgrade it, so my minutes probably be up. Right now, I probably still have some minutes left if I upload it right now, but as of stand right now, I don't think I'm gonna do much on SoundCloud. So all my podcasts will be exclusively only on YouTube. Um, there is a slim chance I may consider upgrading on SoundCloud, but I don't think I will. Very, very, very unlikely. So this may be the last episode for SoundCloud. But all the other episodes, this episode and future episode, will be exclusively only on YouTube because I don't think I'm gonna want to pay, even though the price is not bad. It's $9.99 a month, I believe. But I do have other payments and all that kind of stuff, so I don't think I'm willing to pay for it for the uploading podcast on SoundCloud. Uh, since I can do this podcast and other episode on YouTube with unlimited, as long as I don't do anything, you know, those stupid copyrights crap. Sorry about that. I apologize for it. But yeah, so I think starting after this episode, I may do it like a mini episode to use all my minutes up on SoundCloud. But we see what happens. But from that, all the episode of the Bulls Talk, which is going to be on YouTube from now on. So as for where you can find on YouTube, I need to change the name. I haven't changed the name yet, but look for Bulls Talk or All Bulls Podcasts. Um, I use the username on YouTube. I believe right now All Bulls Podcasts, but I'm gonna probably change it to Bulls Talk. So keep an eye on it. And there will be a logo. I'm gonna have a logo for the Bulls Talk podcast. So the next episode will be like a brand new era. I guess that's what you want to call it. A new era, a little bit differently. Maybe not much different, I should say, but the next episode with a different name and hopefully a new logo for this podcast. I'm supposed to have someone make me a logo. They say give me a few days. It's been like a week, basically a week, almost 2 weeks. So I had to do it myself for this podcast alone. For this podcast, and I'm not good at that kind of stuff, so I do the best I can. So feel free, give me feedback of this logo. I will not post the logo until the fifth episode, not this episode. Okay, so not until the next episode. Um, so keep in mind this. It will be no longer called Our Bulls Podcast. It will be called Bulls Talk. Um, and and I don't think I will upgrade SoundCloud, and I all the future episodes, this including this episode, will be on YouTube. I will upload this episode on SoundCloud. I can tell you that for sure. I don't know about the other episode. I believe I may have some minutes left right now. Before this episode, I have 70 minutes to use on SoundCloud. So if you don't see me upload other future episodes on SoundCloud, I'll probably finish SoundCloud, no, even if I have some minutes left. So keep an eye on YouTube. And you know what? As a matter of fact, I'm gonna go to YouTube right now and change my name to Bulls Talk. But just keep on the search Bulls Talk and All Bulls Podcast. Also, you can follow me on Twitter because every time I finish my podcast and when I upload the podcast, even for this episode, to upload it on SoundCloud and YouTube, very likely on Twitter, I will post both links once it's finished uploading. In which it takes a while to upload it on YouTube. It takes a little while to upload it on YouTube. So follow me on Twitter. My Twitter username is pduh10. So I will be posting every episode. Every time I finish my podcast, every episode, and once I finish uploading it, I will post a link of that episode. So you can follow me on Twitter, especially if you only follow me on SoundCloud, which my account on SoundCloud is All Bulls Podcast, which I don't think I'm gonna change my username on SoundCloud. So if you only follow me on SoundCloud, I suggest you to follow me on Twitter so you can see the link for future episode of the Bulls Talk podcast on Twitter, since I'll be upload future episode on YouTube. Sorry I repeat myself a bunch of times right now, but I want to cover all my basic and make sure you, to all my listeners, people who listen to this podcast, know, understand what I try to say. I knew I forgot something. Also, when you find me on YouTube, feel free to post your comment on the episode, what you think. Like I said, feedback is always welcome. Any suggestion is always welcome. Click like or dislike for whatever episode. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Like I said, I'm gonna go ahead and change my my name, even though I still use my email address, which is allbullspodcast@gmail.com, which I still use the same email address. But I'm going on the YouTube. On the YouTube, you just look for Bulls Talk. But if it's not there, just look for All Bulls Podcast on YouTube. But like I say, I suggest you to follow me on Twitter, pduh10. Again, it's pduh10 on Twitter, because I will post the links once I upload the episodes on YouTube. And also I want to inform everyone that I am trying my hardest to find different ways to improve this podcast. I will also want to tell everyone that I will have different podcasts coming up soon. I don't know when it will debut. I'm gonna do basically NBA basketball podcasts. That's probably another announcement I have. I'm gonna do it separately probably a different account because I want to make it separate. We got Bulls Talk podcast, and NBA basketball podcast. For the NBA basketball podcast, it will be called Talk NBA Hoops, which is for the NBA basketball uh, podcast. Which that one will be exclusively on YouTube. Now I don't know when that's gonna be debut. I am hoping soon. Well, not soon. I shouldn't say soon. Maybe this month. Who knows? But we'll see. So keep an eye on it. I will mention more information on Twitter later down the road. So we see about that. Uh, and I'm going to, in closing, I want to thank everyone who listened to this podcast, and I hope you keep listening to this. I will do my hardest to improve this podcast and to get better. So everyone, thank you so much for the support. Thank you for the feedback. So it's late right now. It's right over here right now. It's 1:22 a.m. So that's when I'm doing recording right now. I start recording like about 12:30 a.m. So, to talk about free agencies, basically. So basically what that I'm talking about, and some other stuff I added. Um, I know I forgot something. To, the last thing I want to say, I don't know when's the next episode I'm gonna do for the Bulls talk. Maybe at the earliest, maybe next week, at the earliest, or at the latest 2 weeks possibility. And also, I want to say before I forget, and especially if I don't do other podcasts before the 4th of July or that kind of stuff. Anyone, have a happy 4th of July. Don't do anything stupid. Stay safe. And have a safe holiday, okay? And have a good weekend, okay? Good night, everyone.